Good morning. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. In our gospel lesson today, the apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." And the Lord replies, "If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you would say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it would obey you." The year 2020 was supposed to be the big Jubilee year for the Diocese of the Central Gulf Coast. 50 years. I was on the Jubilee Committee, and we had worked so hard to come up with a year's worth of celebration. And then COVID struck. COVID ruined almost everything. Almost. May of 2020 was Creation Month for our Jubilee year. That was a month I had worked on long and hard, and it was an outdoor event. Yay, yippee. So St. John's Faithful went outside and did our creation celebration and planted 2 live oak trees. There was a whole liturgy that went along with that tree planting, and our people were more than willing to spend more time after our regular service with God and creation and our church family. They say the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Well, we've now had our little live oaks in the ground for 2 years. It's a foregone conclusion that most of us will not see those live oaks become the enormous, sprawling, Spanish moss-dripping beauties that we associate with Mobile or Natchez, Mississippi. But we have faith that they will one day be glorious. But stepping back into that tree planting time of May 2020, our trees in the ground, we thought, whew, all right, great, mark that off our list. We celebrated Creation Month. Yay, us. And then, you may or may not remember, we had the driest summer and fall ever, much like this one. Bone dry, other than a couple of hurricanes. Our poor little trees started looking like Charlie Brown's Christmas tree. The book of James, chapter 2 says, What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith, but does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, "Go in peace, be warmed and filled," without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. Faith without works is dead. So, back to the trees. We bought 2 100-foot-long hoses, hooked them together, and stretched them across our parking lot. A schedule was created. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, somebody was going to be here watering those thirsty little trees. This went on for months. Actually, I think it went on for more like almost a year. We had breaks when there was rain, hurricanes, or whatever, and then the dry would set back up, and we would set our hoses back up. Today, our little trees are growing and they're healthy. I have no doubt they will be the backdrop of many a wedding photo one day. This is what faith looks like with hands and feet. We take care of each other and of God's creation. One of my favorite faith stories in the Bible is found in Mark chapter 5. It's a little story squeezed in between some other healing stories. It hasn't always been my favorite. only since a trip to Israel 4 years ago exposed me to a large piece of art depicting the particular scene has it become my favorite. The story is one you're familiar with. It's the story of a woman who's been hemorrhaging for 12 long years. She's been to many, many physicians and has spent all of her money, and she is no better. She's actually worse. But she had heard about Jesus and said to herself, if I can just touch his clothes, I'll be healed. This woman is bleeding, so she's considered unclean. She's not allowed in public. She's certainly not allowed to touch a man. That would make him unclean also. But she's past caring about these laws. She's desperate, and she's willing to take that risk. So she slips into the crowd and gets close enough to Jesus to reach down and touch his cloak. And she feels her body's healing immediately. And Jesus feels power leave his body immediately. Jesus stops and he says, who touched my clothes? Well, there's this huge crowd all around him. His disciples must have looked at him like he was crazy. So they said, what do you mean, who touched you? There are all these people everywhere. But Jesus waited and looked around, and the woman, knowing what had happened, came forward with fear and trembling, we're told, and told him the whole truth. And Jesus said, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. She took a huge risk. She broke a few laws. She stepped out in faith. The artwork of this scene is a very large mural that goes all the way around, not all the way, partially away around this room. The entire canvas is just feet and sandals and some dirt and the bottom portion of cloaks and robes and a staff. And there's this one little hand reaching out to touch. It's a powerful reminder of what faith in action looks like. Faith, you see, is like love. It needs works to go with it. That's what Jesus wanted his apostles to understand. They didn't have the book of James that we have today that talks about faith needing works to be viable. So he's trying to make it clear to them. Faith, just like love, needs our hands and our feet as well as our hearts. The second part of the gospel reading, that kind of confusing part about the servant and the master and dinner time and who eats first and how you dress for dinner, is just Jesus's way of saying that when we work for our wages, we're paid a salary. When we do something for God, we shouldn't expect a reward. Our life of faith is an act of love. When we serve God, our faith is strengthened. That tiny little mustard seed dab of faith, it's enough. It's enough if it has hands and feet, or maybe wings and a heart. So what do we do for God? What do we do for God, you ask? I think everything we do for God. When we serve others, we're serving God. You take a meal to somebody who's sick, or you're picking up your neighbor's mail because she's in the hospital. You're doing that for God. But it's more than that. It's also when you're doing the dishes at home, or mowing the grass, or making your bed. Everything we do it for God. This doesn't change how God sees us, but it does change how we see God. And hopefully, if we're paying attention, We see God everywhere, in every face, in every tree, in every place, in every moment. Amen.